They found that students who did not eat the marshmallow, they were able to follow them over, gosh, what would it be, like 12 years. And the students who did not eat the marshmallow 12 years later performed statistically significantly higher on their SAT than the students who ate the marshmallow. So why do I show this to you, other than the fact that it's super cute? The SAT and doing well on these kind of tests are about a lot of things. They're about the content that's tested on the test, so the math, the reading, the writing, the vocab. They're about your ability to think under pressure in a high-stress situation. They're about your ability to sit for 5 hours. But what I've found from working with students over the years is that the most important thing that they're about is about your discipline and your commitment to doing the work that we're going to do over the course of this class. And that's by far what I've found makes the biggest difference. So not the intelligence that you come in with, not even so much the content that you already know, but simply doing the regular work of practicing and having what that video sort of demonstrates, which is the commitment and the ability to take over the next couple of weeks something that is not going to be super, ever going to be super important in your day. Like there's not going to be a day, it's not going to be ever urgent. There's not going to be a day where it's like, oh gosh, today I have to get the SAT done. In the same way that like your homework is going to be, I have to get this done for tomorrow. I have a deadline. It's never going to be very urgent. But it is really important, and those of you who can put in the time to doing little bits of it over multiple times a week, and doing that every week and putting in the work will see the results from it. And your scores will improve, and your college options will improve. So that's why I show that video, because it's just a really powerful example, I think, of things that aren't obviously related, actually have a big impact on tests like this. So this is what we're going to do today. Today's an introductory day. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to ask you a little bit about each one of you. We're going to talk a little bit about an overview of the test. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to run this class and sort of how we're going to put this together. We're going to do some things in here that you'll be very familiar with from other classes. We're also going to do some things in this class that will be very, very different than you've done in other classes. We're going to experiment with what I think is some cool technology. So what I'd like, I'm going to tell you a little bit of myself, but let me just collect your sheets before I do that. Everyone, okay, take a sec, just finish filling it out. You okay? Cool, you all set? I just want to make sure you have a pen. All right. While you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about myself. So my name is Miro. I have been tutoring the SAT specifically now for going on 4 years. Let's work that out. So I was born in Montreal. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to Georgetown undergraduate. It's a great school, and I did not enjoy it very much. So I'm happy to talk with you about what it's like to go to a perfectly good school that's not a particularly good fit for you. If I went to a perfectly good school and had a perfectly nice time, but it probably wasn't the right place for me or the right fit. I graduated. I worked in a couple of different jobs across business and technology for a few years. And I went back and I got my graduate degree from MIT, which was a much better choice. In the last, sort of, I graduated maybe 2 years ago. And while I went to business school, while I was in business school, I actually put myself through business school by beginning to SAT tutor. And I tutored with a friend of mine who was a classmate of mine. And after we graduated, we actually started a company called Testing. And we build software to help students prepare for standardized exams. We'll actually use that software during this class. So to give you a sense, what I do is I tutor and teach individual students, sometimes on nights and weekends. And then I spend all week thinking about writing software to help students prepare for standardized exams. So I really think that these exams are cool and neat and fun and interesting challenges. I don't hold you to that same standard. It's okay if none of you feel that way, but if I seem a little overly excited about the test, That's what's going on. I would have to be to do what I do all the time. I'm also been invited back to teach at MIT in the fall. So I've actually just been appointed to the faculty of MIT. So I have 2 teaching gigs. I teach you on the weekend, and I'll be teaching at MIT during the week. What else? Relevant about me? I'm married. I live in Somerville. I'm not going to be here next weekend while you're taking the Miro test because I'm going to Montreal. I'm really happy to talk anything about my background. I'm totally happy to talk about my personal life and sort of get to know you. What else is relevant here? Part of it, I take the SAT. So I take it usually about once a year. I actually go to a high school locally and take the test. You can take the test at any age, and they will look at you strange, but it is allowed. So I've taken it maybe over the last 4 years. I've probably taken it 3 times. I have an 800 on both the critical reading and the writing section. So I feel well qualified to do this, but I also have a sense of what you're going to go through. And last time I took it at Somerville High School. It was 89 degrees in the classroom that I took it in. There was no air conditioning. The sun was blaring in, and it was brutal. I believe I have an appreciation for that. So that's me. Any questions about me or my background? I guess it's actually probably, you might be curious, my last name is Kazakov, although I'll expect you'll call me Miro. Let's talk a little bit about you guys. It will take me probably about 2 to 3 class sessions to start getting your names together. One of the things that will help me with that is if you all sit in roughly the same places, just for the first couple weeks, that will help me a lot in knowing your names. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around, and I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and just name, where you go to school, what year you are, and tell all of us a little bit about, I want you to think about the best teacher you've ever had, or your favorite teacher. I'd like you to give us a specific example of something that teacher did that made them a really, really good teacher. Okay? See, we're all doing the thing where you're looking up and to the right, or left. That's good. Edward, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Edward. I go to Westford Academy, and I'm going to be a junior next year. My favorite teachers probably, I guess last year I had, for my history teacher, his name was Mr. Kohler, and the reason I liked him a lot was because he's like really enthusiastic about what he teaches, so it makes it fun and interesting.
Can you give an example of like a specific day or a time or something that he did that like illustrated that enthusiasm? Something that sticks out of your head.
He was actually there when the Berlin Wall was up, and we're talking about the Cold War. So he was like giving us stories about him being there, and like he just like talks, and then all of a sudden he just flips through stories. So it was pretty funny and interesting.
Thanks, Edward.
I'm Lily.
Hello.
And I'm going to be a junior at Miro, High School. And my favorite teacher was one that was out of school. I went to summer camp last year, and he was a chemistry teacher. And I thought he was really awesome because he was pretty funny. But then when we got into like the lab, like he would do a lot of like really cool like demos and stuff.
Give me an example of a demo that was like really compelling. You just thought, oh, that's super cool.
There was one where he didn't make us do it afterwards, but he blew up a gummy bear. It's pretty awesome.
How do you blow up a gummy bear?
I forget what he put inside exactly, but he like put, it was something like potassium and and I can put the calendar in it. And just go about, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Lily.
Did it explode or did it like expand?
There was more of just like really bright light, I think.
I'm Victor. I am going to be a junior at Active Oxford Regional High School. And my favorite teacher was my history teacher last year, Mrs. Maddox. And I just friends.
You're Mr. McKellar, we were in the same class.
Last year was sophomore year.
Oh,
Yeah, I just thought she was really like knowledgeable and really knew what she was talking about, and she was also really innovative. And an example of that was when she, at the end of the year, she piloted sort of a Civil War presentation project using iPads, and she was the only teacher that thought of doing that. And we actually got like, it was really successful, and she actually got in school like, I guess, a grant to get iPads for her exercises.
Cool. I take it you were not a fan of Ms. Maddox.
No, because we had the same teacher freshman year, so I was talking about freshman year.
I take it.
was cool too.
Yes, you've made that very clear.
Yeah.
She did not like you.
So I'm Tiffany. I'll also be a junior at AB this year. And my favorite teacher was my French teacher this year, Madam Levitt. Just because she was so like passionate like for the language, not just like in class but outside of class. Like over April break, she like organized this whole trip for like people that were interested to go to Quebec for a week. And when we did that, she kind of like, she would like deviate from the schedule, and she would like take us on little shopping trips, and then like she would lead historical tours, and you could just tell she was really passionate about it.
Awesome.
So really
Cool. Thanks, Tiffany.
I'm Albert. I'm an incoming junior at Bedford. I've been like thinking really hard about this favorite teacher, and I can't make one. So.
All right. Well, think of one good moment with a teacher somewhere in your educational experience where you presumably you've learned something at some point. It doesn't have to be the best moment, but a moment.
I guess I was with our art teacher, and we went outside. We sat like on a basketball court,
Yep.
and then she was like drawing something really cool.
What was she drawing?
I think a tree.
Was she drawing on paper or on chalk?
It was
What
like
was she drawing?
it was pastel.
Yep.
And it was really colorful, and we were playing really cool music, and then I forget the rest.
Great. Thanks, Ellen.
I'm Lindsay. I'm going to be a junior at Wellesley High School, and probably one of the good teachers. In my freshman year, I had an English teacher, and I thought she was really good because she had like, I'd say like two sides of her, like one like playful and then one like serious side. So she could like have like a really fun, bubbly classroom, but then also when it came to testing or like more serious things, she was strict and knew how to control the classroom. Like for example, like if we were reading a book, sometimes we would act out scenes or talk about it and have like a really nice free-flowing conversation. But then when it came to like a time crunch or we had to like read things fast, she would be strict on us and things like that.
Right on.
I'm Juliana. I go to Newton South High School, and I'm going to be a junior next year. And my favorite teacher is last year my chemistry teacher. He's like really old and half like deaf and blind. But he has like a license to burn things, so he did it often. And he also liked to blow things up, so it was fun.
So that he was able to do that made the class really fun.
Yeah.
What's an example?
Well, for Halloween, he brought in like a lot of little pumpkins and a lot of liquid nitrogen and hammers. So we filled it with liquid nitrogen and then bashed them with hammers. It was fun.
That's pretty awesome. Okay. Great. Thank you all for doing that. So there is a reason I asked you to do that specific exercise. So there's two reasons actually. One is that it's helpful for me to get an understanding of what people have liked in teachers and what I can try to do here in this classroom to create an environment that is, what I hope to be sort of, as you talked about, a combination of one where we hold each other to really high standards in terms of the work that we do, but that we have, as much fun as can be possible for a Sunday morning SAT class. The other reason is really SAT specific, which is that on the SAT there is an essay section at the beginning of the test. And one of the big things that the SAT essay does, which is a little different than some of the essays that you're writing for class, is they really highly prize your ability to illustrate something with a specific example. So they will very much look to you to come up with a clear thesis and then have a really specific moment or story or thing that illustrates that idea. So just like if you were to say, what makes a good teacher really great is that they are able to do or create memorable moments. Then a really good example of that would be, on Halloween, so a specific time, this really specific thing. They brought in pumpkins and liquid nitrogen, blew them up, a lot of blowing up stuff. I can't do that in this class. There's just no excuse that I could come up with to blow something up.
Set things on fire.
I don't think I can do that either, actually. I'll try and figure out an excuse in SAT prep somewhere to light something on fire.
After we take the SAT,
Yep.
burn all
I don't generally love the symbolism of burning. It's not one that I'm wild about. Has anyone ever actually done that? Like, people always say that. Wow, okay, that's 3, 2, 4, 6, 7. That's 3 out of 7. That's like 40% of the class that actually burned a book before. What did you burn?
It was at my friend Rachel's Sweet 16 party. We had a huge bonfire where she threw all of her freshman and sophomore stuff into this huge pit, and we just burned it for maybe 40 minutes.
I'm sort of impressed and horrified. I keep all of my books from my classes. They're all up in a bookshelf.
They weren't my books, so I didn't really care.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Awesome. So that's why we do that. And it's a skill that I think will be valuable to you. It actually is a valuable skill in general, to be able to illustrate things with specific points. So one of my goals for this classroom is that you should be able to ask me for anything that we're doing and why we're doing it. And I should be able to tie it back intelligently to how it helps you with SAT prep. If I can't, then you probably have a really good argument that we shouldn't be doing that thing. So let's see, we are about half an hour. Let's talk a little bit about why we're here. My goal here isn't really about the SAT, nor should your goal be, although that's what we're specifically going to talk about here. So my goal here is to help you expand your college options and to help you think, and be able to perform well on this test that represents one portion of your college application. So there's largely going to be 3 parts of your college application. And there's going to be your grades, your extracurriculars, and jobs count in here, anything that you do, and there's going to be your test scores. So these are the two that are really, objective, that have really clear numbers on it. And part of the reason why people do test prep is, unlike this one, which is cumulative over the course of a bunch of years, as is this, which is cumulative over the course of years, this is one of the few things that you can move in actually a reasonably short period of time. So 10 weeks may not feel like short, but compared to the part of your application created by this and created by this is much shorter. And so in 10 weeks of focus time, you can improve your scores on these standardized tests. And it is my belief that all of you who do the work will see your scores improved. You're all juniors. I think that's correct, right? Anyone here a senior? We said everyone's a junior. Everyone's a junior. So you'll all be taking the PSAT in the middle of October this year. This class is designed for you to take the October SAT date. So it's designed to end right at the October SAT date and then have you take the test right afterwards. So it's a little strange. The advice on this is different over the years, but I will highly recommend that all of you take the October SAT date, which is actually before the PSAT takes place. And the reason for that's a couple of fold. All the knowledge on the SAT is already stuff that you've covered in class. So there's no subject area being tested that you haven't been exposed to. You will have done 10-ish weeks of SAT prep right before that test, which is probably as prepared as you are going to get. And what I recommend is that you take it in October or November if October is particularly busy, but probably October. And that you look at your score, and that will give you a chance to, if you'd like to do more preparation, take it again in the spring of your junior year, and then hopefully be done by that point. You'll also then have the option to take it again senior year. I don't suggest what some students are tempted to do, or what more traditionally was done, was that you do this SAT prep class, but then wait until the end of junior year to take the test the first time. Because again, you're just going to be probably as prepared as you're going to be at the end of this class. And so I wouldn't want you to lose that knowledge and that time that you've put in. I also, now that almost all students take the SAT multiple times, it used to be looked upon somewhat poorly to take the SAT multiple times. It's now pretty common that students are going to take it. So the idea that you're going to take it fall of your junior year, then again spring of your junior year, possibly fall of your senior year, isn't going to make any difference to colleges. Question?
For colleges, do they like look at your best overall score, or do they like add up like your best writing and your best reading and your best math?
Depends on the school. Most schools that I know of look at your best score by just adding up your writing and reading. I'll note that for those of you aiming for super competitive schools, the rules start to change. So, or let me just talk about traditional schools. For most schools, the way to think about this is that there's a certain set of SAT scores, and if your SAT scores are higher than the average student coming in, your SAT scores are helping your application. They're helping you be more likely to get into that school, and there's sort of a check in the plus column. If they're lower than the average scores for that school, they're a check in the minus column, and they're holding you back, and you need to think about grades and extracurriculars as being, the stronger part of your application. So your goal is to try and get your SAT score above the average for the schools that are going to be your target schools, such that it's helping your application. How much higher, I actually don't think matters that much, except when you start to get to the highly competitive schools. And actually almost all of you will probably be applying to highly competitive schools. So unfortunately, this is probably the advice to more take to heart. When you get to the really, really high-end schools, like the Harvard, Yale, Princetons, those kind of folks, the game is just totally different. And with those kind of schools, you're basically trying to just max out everything that you possibly can in every way possible. And there are plenty of students with perfect SAT scores